Hi, everybody. We'll get started in just a minute when people finish entering the webinar.
Uh-oh. Sorry.
Okay, let's get started. Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Katie Harris. I am part of the Seattle MLK Organizing Coalition, and I want to welcome you to this workshop on the power of healing circles. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping notes to mention to you. One is that there is captioning available for this workshop. So if you look at the bottom right, you'll see something that says CC live transcript, and you can activate your captioning there. In terms of the chat, the presenters can see what's in the chat, but you will not see what other attendees post in the chat. You can post your questions either in Q&A or in the chat, and the presenters will see both. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the workshop and our presenters. Healing circles are an Indigenous practice of communication that uses dialogue in a circle format to achieve human understanding as a common goal. This workshop is going to be a conversation about taking charge of interactions, using circle methods in schools, between neighbors and families, diversion boards, councils of elders, in order to promote more healthy communities and restorative justice. Our presenters are Dr. Marcia Tate Arunga, who is an educator, author, and cultural custodian, and currently the Dean of Evergreen State College, Tacoma. She's the author of a book called The Stolen Ones and How They Were Missed, and she's led over 75 women to Kenya, East Africa on cultural reconnection delegations. Dr. Orishade Awodola is a root psychologist, author, lecturer, and researcher. She's the founder of the Institute of African-Centered Thought, where she creates and teaches root psychology, ancestral healing, and African spirituality based on ancestral healing identity theory and African-centered thought. So with that, I will turn it over to the two of you to take it away.
Thank you, Kate. And good evening to everyone. What a pleasure to be back for yet another year that we can commemorate Dr. Martin Luther King and the wonderful work that he did for our country, for our world. And we'd like to begin with the song because we understand we're living in trying times. And we are looking at having healing circles as a way of paying attention to the spirit, to the personality, to what's happening to us in our society today, and how can we get back to a place of reconciliation, or as some people say, conciliation, because we may have never reconciled before. And we have noticed a lot of violence and tension among us lately, so we really want to pay attention to that. I'd like to start with the song from Roberta Flack, and just to give you some meditation words. Thank you. Just for a moment of reflection, thinking about what's happening in our world today. That song written by Roberta Flack was written in 1969. but it is so relevant for today and what is happening around us. And so what we want to do today is talk about healing circles, because we have found that this is a very effective way to really begin important dialogues in our communities. But first, let's introduce ourselves just for a moment. I'm Dr. Marcia Taterunga. I'm the Dean of Evergreen State College, Tacoma campus. And we are so happy to always be grounded in social justice as part of our curriculum. But I started doing this work around healing circles and having dialogue and understanding the importance of ongoing shared dialogue when I did the work of cultural reconnection, starting in the year 2000, taking women back to Kenya, East Africa from the Pacific Northwest. And when they went back, we were looking at our identity as women of African descent who lived in the Pacific Northwest, but we're now interacting with women in the homeland of Kenya, East Africa. And in those interactions, we have come to see, we're asking the question, how do we enter this community and begin to form friendships and relationships and have dialogue and conversation, sometimes with people who don't even speak English. And yet it was a necessary conversation to have. And we studied it and we found the effective ways to engage in what we call ongoing shared dialogue. And so we know that there's something very important, something very sacred about having ongoing shared dialogue. Last year, when we at Evergreen were surrounded by our unhoused neighbors, over 50 homeless encampments were surrounding our building. And when we came back out from COVID, we were forced to look around and say, we have new neighbors. How are we going to have conversation with them? And through that dialogue, we were able to have a beautiful, beautiful beginning of healing in a circle through conversation and dialogue. And that's what we want to share a little bit more about with you today. So I enter this conversation as a person who has studied ongoing shared dialogue for over 20 years. My research can be found on a free download called Back to Africa in the 21st Century. And it is about the travels that we took women, over 75 women from the Pacific Northwest to Kenya. And we practiced this ongoing shared dialogue. So it's the basis upon which I'm going to be talking to you today from my side. And now I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, my friend, my sister from another mother, Dr. Orishade Adolawa. I hope I said that right. I'm practicing these days. Good to see you, my friend. Maybe
Thank you very much.
Introduce yourself, please.
Yes, thank you for having me, Dr. Orishade Awadola. And I've been doing this ancestral healing for more than 20 years now. And that's how the healing circles begin. As a African Creole woman from Louisiana with a name like Villavaso, which is Spanish, I asked my dad, what is that? We are Black. He said, you Creole. And I didn't understand what that meant. Anyway, as I went and explored my family tree, I found out the name came from the Spanish enslavers. That was how we got the name in St. James, Louisiana. And then I found out more and more, but more importantly, on the East Coast as a therapist, clinical, I learned that that wasn't working with people. It's not that you don't need it, you do need both. But what really resonated with people to heal was healing circles. And we have to look at healing circles. Healing circles, the source of them is primordial matriarchal energy. It represents the womb that we come out of, the womb of the earth, Mother Nature. And there's something special about that circle, that it has been always addressed through mathematics, through all of it. That's healing about the circle. It represents the I am that I am. It is that matriarchal energy that nurtures us when we get in a circle. Yes. And we could say things that we probably wouldn't say, because we could share with other people our common experiences, and we can walk away without being judged. And there's just something sacred about the circle, and it has been around. We don't even know. I always say at a point in existence, because we don't know what the beginning is. So I developed a model called the Ancestral Healing Circle model, and I do trainings at the Institute, train people to run these circles. Now, there are different kinds. They're emancipation, but these circles are a little more in depth. They help you to understand who you are and your purpose in life. It's not religious. It's just a spiritual component, no more than there's a spiritual essence to the 12-step program. About knowing, understanding who you are. Your family is so important, and that family may not be immediate. It can be external. I understood Evergreen did a circle with the houseless in the parking lot. That's right. And after the circle, people start cleaning up. Everyone wants to feel wanted. And that is the purpose of the healing circle.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you, Orisha Day. You know, I think it also raises a couple of things. You raise the power of the circle itself. And I want to say that in the African tradition, the African worldview, there's no beginning and no end to life. And, you know, like we say, okay, you're born and you start and then you die and then it's over. In the African worldview, there's no beginning. There are the yet unborn.
Right.
And then there is no ending.
No.
There are the ancestors, those who have crossed over. So when we see the circle, when we talk about the circle in indigenous cultures, we really are talking about the continuity of life. And they say, you know, we have our old spirituals, the Negro spiritual that said, let this circle be unbroken. We know that power of the circle is one in which we contain our energy inside. We can heal. We can begin to do very powerful things once we have summoned that energy inside of the circle. So it's very important. And many Native American tribes honor the circle. Many African tribes honor the circle. One of the things I did when I was working with African clothing and African fabrics, you find a lot of circle designs in the fabric. It's a reminder of the continuity of life.
Yes.
So we are talking about.
And we eat in the circle. We eat in the circle. We dance in the circle. I mean, even secular dancing, you know, you get in a circle and see who does that. A Soul Train line ends up in a circle. So it's all about, pie is a circle. So when we look at that, we look at the sacredness and how the womb opens up and life emerges through a circle again.
And the earth, the sun, and the moon are all circles. So we're already entering. We invite all of you to enter with us now. This is the sacred place as we talk about the power of the healing circle.
Yes.
Orisha, would you start with your
Yes, I have a presentation that I'm sure if I hope everyone can see it. This is based on the ancestral healing model that that I created some years ago, but this is what I teach. So the first one says, THAM says, the ancestral healing model. Ancestral is simply honoring those who came before you. We just saw that with Martin Luther King and Roberta Flack. It's external ancestors and internal. So that's your immediate bloodline and those that are on the road in your life, like Uncle Joe who owns the candy store. So the identity theory proposes that through a course of actions, understanding one's, and I'll be paraphrasing, individual life purpose is based on identity, and it is required for transgenerational healing. So what does that mean? You have to know who you are in order to begin the process. It doesn't say you have to know who you are to be in a circle. The circle helps facilitate you to understand, in my model and in the training that I do, your identity.
And just a moment about transgenerational healing, like what that is. That's such an important concept for us.
Transgenerational healing is the trauma that we experience from generation to generation that gets swept under the rug. Let's look at 3 major man-made disasters that happens in: the Holocaust, the Trail of Tears, and of course the African slave trade. That's just 3 major ones we know in the United States. We're not talking about the Arab slave trade or the what's going on in Jerusalem now. And all of these things have a traumatic impact. And for those who may be old enough to remember, when a woman was pregnant, she could not go to a funeral because the old folks would say she's pregnant. And they felt that spirits or whatever it was that could impact the child or the embryo, and they didn't want that to happen. And it does, because now we know today with neuroscience, with ultrasounds, that the fetus, as early as the embryo, can hear sound outside the mother's womb. And so that means that the fetus also takes on the mother's trauma and feelings. So that was a big thing they did with the drugs, right? When a child was born, or crack babies we talked about. And so we have to look at that. And what does that take? Because it's up to each generation to provide healing for the next generation. And that's a process.
Now look at that.
That's a process.
It's a huge process. And also when I think about my great-grandmother's trauma, I know nothing about it. And yet the trauma that my great-grandmother experienced is still running through my veins and is a part of my psyche. That is the essence of transgenerational healing.
That's right. And that is what you're able to identify in the training I do in these healing circles. You may not realize it. Like, let me just give a simple thing. You might shake your right leg all the time. That's coming from a great grandma somewhere or a great grandpa. And then when you get into your family lineage, then you realize the similarities. Oh, that's why I do this. In my own experience, I know why I'm a advocate for social justice. My great-great-grandfather, who I never knew, Dr. James W.C. Pennington, wrote the book, which is at Amazon, The Fugitive Blacksmith. He explained he escaped from slavery in Maryland and purchased the family's freedom. He's just one. My other uncle died at Harper's Ferry with John Brown. He was hung, John Copeland. So when we go back in our tree, everyone has a history.
Yes.
You know, it may not be those people, but those people are regular people. And so when you look at it, then you look at the trauma, what that they go through. When I thought of his story and how they didn't even wear shoes, the slaves. And even the ones who were free were not free. That's just the Atlantic slave trade. What about the Native Americans who had to go west with no shoes? This is trauma. And the women that were pregnant then, and the child survived, but the child carries that trauma. And so this is the problem in mental health that people don't understand when they may be bipolar or whatever. They don't understand where it's coming from because it's coming from another generation. And that is why there's a process, and that is why healing circles are needed.
Yes, thank you.
Healing circles in addition to whatever your practice or what do you do, whatever you do.
Okay, let's keep those slides going so everyone gets a chance to see.
Okay, the next slide talks about it, transgenerational trauma, ancestral guilt, and progression is components and processes throughout our internal and external symbolizers. This addresses systemic racism.
Yes, it does.
Ancestral guilt is simply critical race theory. That's what it does. When people say, we don't want to talk about that, we don't want our kids to feel that way, that's ancestral guilt. But guess what? It's coming from an ancestral experience.
Absolutely.
That's
one that has
that
not been an experience that has not been reconciled.
Reconciled, embraced, or recognized.
Yes, yes. And by the way, can we accept that this could be, this is a Black experience, and it can also be a white experience?
Yes.
Asian experience?
Yes.
A Jewish experience, and
yes.
on and on and on.
I want to bring this point up because people don't talk about it enough. There were Black slave owners, but what about the white women who had to knew their husband was raping the Black women, and then the next 9 months they see a mixed, a biracial child running around? What they had no rights. So see, this transgenerational trauma impacts everyone. And that's why it needs to be discussed, because all of the systems in this country, in the United States, are based on that type of trauma.
Absolutely.
Next slide. I'm going to go to the next slide.
Okay.
How do we address these issues? This is just a course review of how I address it in what I teach. It is through religious beliefs. We examine that. We look at assimilation, acculturation, mistrust, compromise, and identity. A little what you just touched on, Marsha. Recognizing, embracing, admitting. What I hear a lot of people say, and this is in a healing circle, oh, but I'm not like that. But, you know, I hear Black people say it too. I heard a Black guy in his mid-20s say, did you know Black people started ragtime? Who doesn't know that? That's piano music for them. So how do we do it? We look at generational patterns and emotions in these healing circles. We learn how to observe and effectively communicate to break the unhealthy family patterns. You know, the talk at the table, you know, the jokes. Every family has it, right? I mean, especially with this January 6th thing, we're patriots. Oh, it was just a peaceful demonstration. Come on. The second part to do is to learn to identify the systems, internal and external, and what are the boundaries there in order to effectively recognize the transgenerated emotions and patterns of shame, guilt, and anger. In the circle, we can discuss each one over a period of time. And a multicultural circle is a good thing. Meaning different people, because everyone has a story. And that's where we find our commonalities at. There's no superiority here.
And we will find in our history that we have been on both sides.
Yes.
So
yes.
there's no one to blame and say, well, this group is the perpetrator. Actually,
right.
we have been both perpetrator and victim in our history.
Right.
Next
And
slide.
this is the final side. What do we do? How do we as educators do this? We review and discuss these recommended solutions that I've put forth. We have a student applicant empowerment retreats to practice open-mindedness and learn how to think outside of the box. That's critical thinking. To understand our maternal and paternal lineages and how that influences our behavior and what we do. And then we look at how to retrieve and focus. And this is a really deep piece here on the umbilical connection, identify emotions in our family connections. That sums up my presentation, but this is what I recommend in our healing circles. The healing circles go beyond the circle. We have to do retreats. We have to follow up. We have to be consistent.
Absolutely.
So I thank you for letting me share.
That's
that
beautiful
information.
So I want to share now a little bit. Let me see if I can pull this up for you quickly. And this is because there is a process to the healing circle. There's a process involved.
Yes.
So I want to, oops, sorry, I'm not sure it's that one. Yes, it was that one. Just wasn't at the beginning. No, it wasn't that one. Anyway, as I'm looking for it, we know that there is a process to the healing circle.
Yes.
It's not something that you just go and start a conversation. We have to look at, as Dr. Hardiman, one of our friends and mentors, said, she always said when we were in Africa, she said, this is about when and where we enter. That came from Julia Anna Cooper's book, Where We Enter, the whole race enters with me. And what I wanted to say was that this has been really important that we look at how we go and begin a conversation and a dialogue. So what I want to show you in these photographs that you're going to see here are what we did at the healing circle. We began by smudging the area.
Yes.
Now I used cedar that was given to me by my Ojibwe sister friend. She gave me cedar that she had collected. You could use many different kinds of smudges. I think a lot of people use sage is the one they would use to clear the air. And in fact, it's known that you are cleansing the air when you use that sage. We light it and we walked around the building and we began to set a tone for creating a sacred ground, being in a peaceful and inviting place. Then we had also this centerpiece, and we laid it on a mat. If you see, there's a mat there. It's a Hawaiian mat, and there was a talking stick. There's a talking stick there, and that was gifted to me. And no one should speak without the talking stick, because when you are in a healing circle, it's very important that a person speak one at a time and that they are fully heard. And when they are done, they pass the talking stick and they are satisfied. You don't want, you have to fit in your words quickly because another person wants to talk. That creates too much tension. This needs calmness and healing and the person to fully express. So they take the healing stick and they hold it as they speak. We often put live things in the center as well. So there's a bowl of a basket of fruit there, and the basket of fruit represents life. We also had water. In this particular photo, we put soil that came from the parking lot where we were meeting, because we understood that it was the soil who had witnessed many generations that needed healing. And by the way, as we're speaking today, I really want us to think about our environment, that all of the conflicts that we have, all of the destruction of our community, really at the bottom is our environment suffers the most. And that's what that soil represented. The ancient years that had been witnessed with fighting, hatred, disagreement, and now here we were, yet another generation sitting on the same soil, trying to figure out how to have a dialogue. So as Dr. Orishade said, we put the chairs right in the parking lot, and we invited people to come into the circle in the parking lot. The homeless, you can see some of the homeless encampments over the hedges there. We had over 50 encampments, and we said, we would like to have a rich conversation. Rich represent our values at Evergreen. It's an acronym for reciprocity, inclusivity, civility, and hospitality. Those are the values that we have at Evergreen. And so we told our homeless neighbors, we'd like to have a rich conversation with you. And they began to gather and gather. Soon the chairs were filled. But I want to tell you the benefit of the healing circle was so much more than just having people come and sit in that circle. What we got were partners. So the people that you see with these umbrellas, and they had services. Our alumni got together, they organized lunches. They called all of their contacts in the city. We had people bringing needle exchange came. We had HIV/AIDS testing. We had COVID testing right in the parking lot. We had all kinds of counseling and other kinds of services that were offered to people at the same time that we were having the circle. And we knew then that we were doing more than just calling the circle. We were calling together our community, and those who could help came. And even neighbors who had houses came to our circle, and they talked about the experience of living in a house with so many homeless right outside their door. And then we had the homeless who talked about their experience. What we found was that the majority of people who lived around us came from that neighborhood. They originated from there. This was their home. We found that they were a community intact, sometimes violent, but often looking after each other. We found out that they cared for each other. They were a community. And that maybe that's one of the things we should think about when we're looking at how do we solve the problem of the homeless? It can only be solved if we're looking at them as a community and not as individuals with individual needs. And so we learned a lot from that. But one of the greatest things we learned from the healing circle, and one of the greatest benefits, was the Lived Experience Coalition. They're based in Seattle. They're now based in Tacoma. And they came and they got a grant and found resources. They were able to bring food, meals like Ezel's chicken, which was a big draw. So Ezel's chicken was big. They also brought money, the gift cards that could help people. So this community began to grow and take care of itself and its own needs. And also we saw that the people who were previously unhoused neighbors were beginning to feel some sense of dignity. They felt like they were being heard, like they were human beings, and we were able to listen to them. So we found the power of the healing circle in that dialogue. It was so much more, as Dr. Orishade said, it was so much more than just sitting in a circle and having a dialogue. It was about building community. Dr. Orishade?
Yeah, I would like to add to that and say, a lot of times we look at the people that are houses we do not know their stories. It goes back to the story. Many of them are not people that are uneducated or on drugs. Things have happened in their lives.
That's right.
Many have had traumatic experiences. Many have lost their homes, their families. Many disasters like Katrina, like 911, you know, you never know. People aren't always able to bounce back from trauma.
Yes.
So I want people to look at that. When you see someone asking for it, don't judge. If you give from your heart and let it go. If you can help somebody, you'll help somebody, because truly the bottom line to humanity is about helping lift each other up. Because we could all be in that position. We could all be in that position. At any given time, you never know what could happen.
I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.
So yes, 100%. This is about seeing our humanity in each other.
That's right.
And the healing circle begins that, because sometimes you're sitting in a circle where you don't know people, but asking a question that everyone can answer is the beginning of unity.
Mm-hmm.
So we have seen this as being helpful. We want to encourage all of you to really have the courage to go to a healing circle, to sit there, to listen, and to participate to the best of your ability. You will not be sorry. So Dr. Orisha Day, is there any other point we need to make before we open this for Kate to get some questions and answers?
No, I don't think so. I think we've said it all.
Yes. Now, I want to remind you that Dr. Orisha Day, we both were doing work with Africa Town. And
Yes.
one of her responsibilities was to formulate the healing circle. And so you have done multiple, probably hundreds of healing circles right in Seattle.
Yes.
And with your trainings, you actually train the trainer so
Yes.
that we can multiply healing circles in our area. So
and they become certified and they graduate, as you saw at the conference. Matter of fact, our next training starts tomorrow evening, and you can put my email if anyone is interested.
Awesome.
in
Let's
it.
put that in the chat. Hi, Kate.
Okay.
Do we have
Hi.
anyone asking us questions yet?
We have one question in the
Okay.
queue, and that is, given the pandemic, have you been able to replicate the circle virtually?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Orisha Day, you can answer that, but let me do my first. We have been completely virtual. So yes, we did do, as you saw, the circle live, face to face, and we found that very powerful. But I have also participated in circles virtually. And it is very helpful, especially when everyone is on the same screen. So usually if you can work with 20 people in a healing circle, then everyone can see each other, because it's really important that the idea of the healing circle is also to eliminate the hierarchy. You know, there's no one so much greater than the next one. We're all equal in the circle. So we do that. We have managed to do it virtually, and we encourage that it's actually just as effective, but there's something I think really special about being face to face. Dr. Orisha Day, your thoughts?
Yes, we do. Since the pandemic, we do virtual. We do virtual healing circles.
I have to
And
say,
it's been just as effective. Yes, and we just had a major conference at Evergreen, and we had 25 people graduate that were certified, and so they go out and they're doing healing circles now. I think one is doing a homicide healing circle, so it's just as effective.
So another question, what kind of opportunities for participating in healing circles exist in Seattle?
Mhm.
Or
There's so
are you
many.
recommending bringing healing circles to one's own community?
Absolutely. I would say both and. Once you know how to do, if you have come into a community and you've learned how to do it, it's so important to continue, maybe even begin with your family or just your neighborhood. So we definitely agree that it's important to come so that you understand the dynamics of the healing circle and then to start your own. Dr. Arishade, do you agree?
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Another question, are there Indigenous roots to healing circles, and have you conducted healing circles with Indigenous communities in the US?
Absolutely.
They are 100% an Indigenous practice. You see, if we think about the way that we go to school right now, you know, how the classroom is set up, where everyone is sitting behind each other in their desk watching the teacher, that's a hierarchical model. We have over the last few decades learned to break some of that down, and we find that when you're sitting in a circle, there's no one behind anyone else. So you are bearing yourself. There's honesty just by arranging that you sit in the circle. This is an Indigenous practice. It is practiced by people, Native American practice. It's an African practice. It's a practice in oceanic places. And we have seen it repeatedly in those indigenous places. However, it is a welcome time that we incorporated in this modern society. I believe it may be the only hope to getting off of the many other ways that we have learned not to communicate with each other and to begin to lean into real communication. I believe the healing circle is the answer to that. And
Yes.
Dr. Arishade, you had a couple of examples of healing circles. They're not all just one type of.
No, we have, there's emancipation, there's homicide, there's trauma, there's different.
Gentrification.
Yes, gentrification. We have many different types of healing circles that I do. So, you know, I'm willing to send information. I put my website in the chat. So you could just go review the chat. There's a path course guide that explains and breaks it down the way that how I train the trainer to do these circles. So I was going to try to pull up the formats, but there's many different circles. And let me say, you know, that people can do healing circles, but all healing circles are not healing circles.
Right.
Sometimes they're talk circles where people just vent. But IAC does healing circles, and everyone that has come through IAC's programs, their lives have been transformed, and they're doing great work all over the city. Many have incorporated, mental health professionals have incorporated it into their practice.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak a little bit about the difference between a talk circle and a healing circle?
Well, a talk circle is about general situations, like someone got shot, and it may be a circle for the family. It may be a community circle about gentrification, how people feel about gentrification. That's a talk circle. A healing circle is about identity, what I outlined in the PowerPoint. It's about understanding who you are in your family lineage in order to heal through the traumatic experiences that are transgenerational. Like I pass on to my children through my emotions because you know that's how it goes. That's a whole nother ball game. A healing circle is not a talk circle.
So some might have more substance than others.
Yes.
I would say all circles are important when they are, the symbols are important for healing. So I explained some of those symbols. And what we have to understand is that when you leave the circle, you're not necessarily healed.
That's right.
That's right. You're not healed right away, but it is the beginning of the healing. And as Orisha Day talked about venting, you know,
Yes,
venting there's a place for venting.
the place for venting.
There are people who have held anger, they have pent up frustrations that no one has ever heard them express. That is the purpose also of the healing circle, for them to share so that they can be heard. Can you imagine what the body it does when it's finally heard? It just
Yes,
goes limp. It's like, oh, finally. And so
yes.
these are different applications to the healing, but all must happen. And I want to add one other thing. The healing circle, when you walk away, there's still activity and instructions that one needs to continue their journey.
That's right.
You are not just healed at that point. Sometimes the question
It may
might
take
be,
a year.
yeah, and the question might be, so what are we going to do about it? What kind of action can we take? Because people feel so helpless, they
Yes.
think there's nothing they can do. So when they get into a healing circle, sometimes solutions are possible. And this is why it begins in one place, but it ends on another
place.
trajectory.
Another place. I like to add, because I see where someone is talking about racial healing circles, if I may.
Please.
What is that? Because when we talk about racism, we're talking about an attitude and a behavior as a.
Uh-oh, you're
You're
muted.
muted.
We're talking about systems of acculturation and assimilation. So unless the person that is doing the racial healing circle is balanced in African-centered thought as it relates to Black people or Native American-centered thought, you cannot do that circle. You can only talk about the surface. You don't know what the macaw experienced. You can empathize with them. You can share things with them. No one's trauma is measured above or below another. The idea of racial healing is to listen. It's to listen.
Mm-hmm.
You can't heal racism because it's an attitude. So the work is on the individual. And that can be a painful journey to go back. And so that I saw that in the chat, and I said, I need to address racial healing circles.
And I'd like to address it maybe slightly differently, because I think what we have to do is interrogate our own history. And when we have done that well, we are ready to come to the circle to have racial healing circles. But when we don't do our own work and we want to come to the circle and heal everybody but ourselves, that's a problem. So it has to come from a very internal place. And I do believe that the pain of holding undue power is also an illness. It needs healing as well, as people who have not had power to wield for their own lives. And so those two groups do need to come together, and they do need to have dialogue, and not looking for solution, but looking for understanding.
I'd like to add, I'd like to show a diagram in reference to this, what I'm saying. Can you see it?
Yes.
It's called the belief system. It's what we believe.
Can you make it a little bigger?
Sure. Can you see now?
Yeah, that's fine.
Can you see it now?
Yeah,
We can see it, but we can't see the labels on the top.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The belief system is simply this when we talk about racial healing. This is the right side of the brain. This is the left side. Nothing works without the right. The left side is I mean, the right, this is the right, this is the left. They work together. And we're not going to get into neuroscience here. The left side of the brain is the linear side. So all of these shapes are how we process information in different ways. What happens though? When we receive information that is not comfortable, we try to send it through a mental questionnaire to justify or make sense of it, but we have a problem. You know why? Because it is outside of our belief system. Our belief system is what we are born with. Our belief system is what we learn as a kid from 0 to 5 in the external environment. That is what you cannot change. This is what you work on when we talk about healing circles. I just thought I'd add a visual of how information is processed. And this goes into the cerebral and all of that. So you see, it's a little more, I'm a little more, I guess you could say, I've combined my holistic and clinical approaches to make sense. So, and some people are baffled by that. Well, just think about when you receive information that you're not familiar with. What do we say? That's not true. Because I had a cousin who did this, but you had one cousin who did that. Well, how does it sit with you? Because mainly the way it sits with you is what you believe in terms of spirituality and religion. That's another ball game. We're not going there. I don't go there.
So we won't take responsibility for that, the psyche of people.
That's right.
But
Exactly.
I do believe when people have done their own internal work, they're ready to come to the circle.
That is what we do in the healing circle. Help you be able to come to that point of acceptance, to embrace yourself wholly, to live a balanced, healthy life. Then you can help somebody else. Then, as Diana Ross said, reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place.
Now we have 1 more minute. I want to kind of address those last 2 questions. I kind of mentioned already when we started the healing circle at Evergreen right there in the parking lot, we had no idea that homeowners would be coming, bringing some assistance or contributing, that that even businesses around would come, that the Lived Experience Coalition would bring their resources. Everyone, because we said we were having the circle, they gravitated with their resources to the circle. Where we grew was tremendous. And even now we have permanent partnerships with these people because they came to our aid at that time. And also I want to say that I think this is the beginning of empowering a community to be able to take control of the elements of potential incarcerated people, to come sit in our community and share what it is that you have done. If you really have remorse for it, maybe we can handle it inside of our community before it becomes a retributive justice matter. So we think that there's a lot of matters that could be handled right inside the circle. And we have to give it a chance.
Absolutely. This has been really great. Absolutely. This is how it starts, Katie. This is how it begins.
Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
There are a few questions that we didn't get to, and I'm wondering if you could address them offline, and then I'll include them in the follow-up letter that goes out to attendees.
That would be wonderful. And can I just say for my final sentence that I just want to encourage everyone to just step up and go to a healing circle. Even if you feel awkward at first, just go and sit and listen. It will change your life.
It will.
I have put a couple of links in the chat, and those links are to the evaluation form and to upcoming workshops. And we hope you'll attend, and thank you so much, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate your interest.
Thank you.
And I'm
Okay.
just going to grab the last of the comments here and save them so that we can answer your questions. Thank you so much, everybody. This concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Have
Bye.
a wonderful evening.
What a
Bye-bye.
pleasure to work with both of you.
Yes.
You too.
Good night.
Good night.